Welcome back to the Homeschool Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Bex Buzzy. Today's guest is Michele Holmes, CEO and founder of Homeschool Directive. Over the past 30 plus years, Michele has seen and experienced many different homeschooling philosophies, values, and methods. But at the heart of them all, she believes lies one important value, and that is freedom. The freedom to choose the coursework, the freedom to choose the curriculum that best gives your student the education they're going to need to be successful during their school years and after graduation, whatever their plans may be for their future. And after walking alongside hundreds of homeschooling parents and their teens, Michele created Homeschool Directive, an online non-traditional school that gives parents the structure they want and the freedom they crave to create a positive and successful high school experience for their teens at home. In this episode, we talk about how international home educators can take advantage of U.S. high school diplomas, transcripts to achieve a secondary education in their own country. How seeing the smiles on the faces of home educators have helped her through the years as they present their teens with a high school diploma. And lastly, how homeschooling parents can enroll their students with Homeschool Directive for academic direction, structure, and transcript. Go grab your coffee, go grab your tea, and a pen and paper, because you're not going to want to miss what Michele has to say. Let's get into the podcast. Say hello to our guest and tell us, what's a fun fact about your industry that will really surprise our listeners?
Hello, everyone. Well, what a fun fact that is going on currently in the homeschooling community is the international homeschooling movement is on fire. They are just really embracing home education, especially like in the UK. They are just really focusing on really changing the educational system there by home educating their own children and doing it differently than traditional in the UK and other parts of the world. They are leaning towards the United States transcript diploma method in order to be able to customize their own home education, which is really, really exciting to just be able to talk to people from around the world homeschooling and just really being innovators in their own countries. It's really a fun thing that's happening in the homeschooling community right now.
That is exciting to hear that the homeschool arena, the homeschool community is just expanding so much further and that other countries are really adopting that and just running with it. And that's just super exciting. So the focus of your work is to how are you helping parents from their international to be able to achieve those secondary education like credits and transcripts?
Well, what's going on right now, especially in the UK and in other countries, is that they're trying to home educate differently in the sense that it is very expensive for a home educated family to do the A-level testing or the testing, let me resay that, or to do the testing system there in the UK. And it's very expensive. They have to go usually like to London and they have to schedule time away and it's exhausting. They have to do something like 10, 15 different tests. And they're finding that, that they don't necessarily want to do it that way. They don't want to spend the money. They don't want to put their children into this situation that they have to do these testing in order to be able to go to the university there. And the fun thing is that what the home educators in the UK are finding is that the United States transcript is acceptable. The United States diploma / transcript is acceptable over in the UK. And so a lot of home educators there are transitioning from the traditional UK testing route and going to the US transcript diploma route.
Wow, that is pretty intense.
Well,
That's really,
it's so different, right, from their normal structure of how they do education there in
yeah,
the UK. It is all about testing. From a young age in the UK, you're groomed to take these tests.
wow.
And in order to get into the university there, you have to pass these tests. It's the only way in. But it's not. That's what everybody thinks. It's not the only way. And a lot of the UK universities over there take international students, and those international students, especially if they're coming from the United States, do not come with all of those tests. They come with a diploma / transcript.
I was
And
just thinking
so,
that. Yeah, I was just thinking that because I know a lot of my friends have gone over to different countries for their college degrees, and I was just thinking, well, I don't think they've taken all those tests. So I'm like, yeah, but when you said that, I was like, well, that makes total sense.
yeah, so what's exciting is that the home educators there are catching on to this, and they're creating their own transcripts and diplomas, and their children are attending the universities. And if you go to any of the universities in the UK, it has right on there. If you usually can go through the international department. It's because it's kind of newer over there. So kids are getting into the university over there, even though they're UK citizens, they're applying through the international students and turning in their transcripts and diplomas that way and getting accepted into universities that way.
Now, you're a master at turning anything into a credit, aren't you? Like, you are a
That
master at that.
So for your audience that hasn't heard of me before, I have 8 children. I homeschooled for 32 years, and each of my children educational journey was different. And I had to learn how to homeschool each of them differently. I also ran a co-op that was dedicated to high school. And so we had like over 200 students every year. And so I've seen, here in the United States, we call it homeschooling. Overseas, they call it home educators. But I have learned over the years, over the last 30 something years, of how to take whatever a child is doing in their home and turn that into a high school credit for their transcript.
Wow.
And it is, once you learn my methods, it's so easy. You can just turn whatever your kids' interests are, whatever their goals are, and you can turn that into a high school credit.
I love that. And it's so powerful because that's what education really should be about, right? The kids being able to, follow their interests, follow their desires, and be able to learn the different, core subjects, you would say, through their interests. It seems so very natural to me in a sense, right? Like if a kid, let's just say for me, I loved art and I still love art, right? But I didn't learn my history in high school the traditional way. It was really difficult for me. Like it was awful. I hated history, but I learned history. I mean, my listeners probably knows by now. They're probably sitting there saying right now, you learned it through art history. I remember, it's like, but I did. I learned history through art history, and I learned, all the traditional stuff through the different ways that art, they painted, and it was way easier for me. And I learned math through music. I didn't learn math proper way. Like I went to math class, but it never stuck. It wasn't until I took a music class that the math there made sense. Decimals made sense. Fractions all of a sudden made sense, and everything made sense. And I was like, oh, was that what they were trying to teach me? Yeah. Okay.
It's really important, I think, that if we're going to be in the homeschooling community, that we look back to the late 70s or early 80s. That's the beginning of the modern homeschooling movement. And it was all about educational reform. It was about doing school differently. And so, I started homeschooling in 1990. And so I sat through listening to Dr. Moore, and he talked about education in a certain way, and you have John Holt, and so when you're coming from that experience, it's really hard for me to embrace this whole school at home, especially after COVID, and our kids are just sitting at computers for hours in a day. It's kind of sad when I see that, because that's really not what the homeschooling movement is about. It's about freedom to be able to customize your children's education. Now, for you and your family, it might be okay to do an organized curriculum, and that just works really great for a particular family. But for another family, they might decide that they want to do it completely opposite. And I think with my years of experience and seeing homeschooling happen so many different ways, that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that there's not one right answer to how you do that. But to be able to integrate your children's love of the arts, or if they're engineers, or whatever their life goals are and their interests, to be able to customize the education towards those interests, it's an easy buy-in for your kids. Like, that's, the hardest thing about homeschooling through high school is getting the buy-in of a teenager. And it just seems that when you approach it towards their interests and their desires, it just comes so naturally. And like you said, that you enjoyed music and it opened your eyes to mathematics, and then you enjoy art and you learn more history because of art. So that integrating subjects around one topic is a beautiful way to homeschool. And it's like cheating as a homeschool parent. Like, you can do language arts and have them and integrate the language arts into your science program, right? Like, it's kind of the easy way to homeschool, is to integrate one topic around a couple different educational branches.
I agree. I'm almost like, that's like, this is the crux. There's a word I'm looking for, that the epitome, the best. I don't know. It's some phrase, but anyway, I'll figure it out and I'll say it some other time. But it's really cool. That's why I love the homeschool community so much. So what inspired you to do this? Like, how did you get inspired to start doing what you're doing?
Well, I started off locally by running the homeschool group. I started the co-op because my oldest was getting older and I wanted her to have a community, and really there wasn't a lot back then for high schoolers. So it just lent myself to, like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to focus more on high school classes. And then it just turned into, 20 years down the road, I was helping a lot of local homeschool parents. My goal was to help people homeschool all the way through high school. Like, that's my desire, is to see thousands of people homeschool all the way through high school. And so even in my own journey, once you get to that 7th and 8th grade year, like, things change and you start getting worried as a homeschool parent. And it doesn't matter if you're pulling your kids out in 7th and 8th grade, or you've been homeschooling since they were, kindergarten. When you get towards high school, it gets scary. And so, I just started doing workshops and helping people. And then I moved on into the online space. And now I have an umbrella school to help people who would like to be coached along the way, and have somebody to help them with the record keeping and issue a transcript. And so it's just evolved over the last 30 years of being in the community with the goal of homeschooling all the way through high school.
Wow, that's awesome. And I heard someone else say before, like, if I homeschooled my kids all through elementary school, I am not going to put them in high school. That's my reward, to watch them be able to learn on their own now. Like, now it's like I get to partner with them. I have a lot less work to do. And I've heard a couple of people say that, like, it's like high school is like you do a lot less work because you've already taught them how to learn. You've taught them how to do certain things. So I was like, oh, that's a really interesting take.
That is, I have broken down in my head that elementary is practice for junior high, middle school. Middle school is practice for high school, and high school is practice for college and beyond, for adult onboarding. And I've always said the hardest part of homeschooling through high school is getting through that middle school age. If you're international, that's that between 10 to 11, 12, 13. Like those are such difficult years, emotional. Like the children are emotional. And there's so much that is happening to our kids. Pre-adolescence bodies are changing so rapidly. And I have seen a lot of people give up at that age. And they're like, these kids are crying all the time. It is not fun. I think we sometimes glamorize homeschooling as that it's this beautiful, beautiful thing. Every day is perfect. And some days are hard. And for some reason, middle school or that 11, 12, age is just extremely difficult, and it's not us, the parents, it's the kids. And I think if
100.
we had more homeschooling parents talk about that, oh, this is normal. It's okay for your kid to be, all you spent that day was on character because they needed to finish an assignment and they didn't, or, they're crying over in the corner and they don't really know why. You don't know why. And if you can just get through that those 3 years.
Yeah.
You get to the other side of that. And if you've been patient during that time, the reward is on the other side, that high school years, like you were mentioning, that people have said.
Yeah. That's what I keep hearing.
I didn't find that those years were easier for me, especially I think because each of my kids' high school journeys were different. I had to learn so many different things along the way to help them, but I didn't have to necessarily sit next to them. Like we only had a check-in meeting once a week.
Right.
I really strongly encourage that at the high school level, that you are checking in with your kids at least once a week, asking them some questions about their weeks, because as your friends mentioned before, as your children are getting older, it's less time with you. Remember, I think that high school is preparing them for college and life afterwards. And so you want to be stepping back a little bit in that role, maybe outsourcing some harder classes that you don't feel comfortable with. Now they have to answer to that, a teacher online, or if they're going to a community college and they're taking classes there, or they're working, or they're teaching music lessons. And so this whole adult onboarding, I call it, happens during those teenage years when you get to that high school level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny talking about the middle school levels. I almost, so I started my teaching career was in middle school. So I didn't know anything different, right? So like that's all I ever knew was middle school. So for me, this is what kids were like. And then I went to high school and I was like, oh, this is very nice. These kids are calm. It was really, really nice. Yeah. I was like so happy. I was like, oh, this is great. Then they wanted me to bring me back down to middle school again. And I remember, and this was after 10 years of being in high school. And I was like, yeah, if that happens, I quit. Like, I was like literally ready. I was like, I am going to quit. I'm like, I'm not going back to middle school. Like, that is the most emotional time in my life. I was like, I don't want to do it. I remember thinking, I was like, I'm going to quit. I'll find something else to do.
Right. So I was seeing, especially in my local community, that people were pulling their kids out in junior high. That's that 11, 12 age. They were pulling them out of private school, out of public school, because they weren't doing very well there. Or people were putting their kids into private or public schools because it wasn't working at the homeschool level either. And so like I said, I think we just need to be very honest that it's not the parent.
No,
it's just
the years.
It's the years. It's what's happening to their bodies.
Totally.
And
100%.
And you should be introducing more responsibilities at those ages, right? We're preparing them for high school. We're practicing for high school. So for in some homes, even if you're unschooler, like I have seen homeschooling done from very, very traditional all the way to unschoolers. Here's what happens at the high school level. It doesn't really matter what your educational philosophy is. You have to capture what your children are doing and put it onto a piece of paper. Now, I do have some friends that have we're not doing transcripts. We're not doing diploma. I've always encouraged people to do that because it's like your kids did the hard work and you did the hard work. Do the piece of paper. It's their resume. Do their portfolio. It is an end of an era of your time with them in helping them to launch into adulthood. And so, like I was saying before, it doesn't matter if you're doing traditional or unschooling, in the sense that you need to capture what they're doing and start putting it down onto paper. And so that you're moving from elementary to middle school, and you're going to start introducing maybe assignments that have, you would like them to be completed by a certain time. So those things are kind of happening in that middle school level too. That's kind of new for them, that you could be getting some pushback. You might say, oh, you're going to read these 5 books in the next 3 months, and I want one book done, every 3 weeks. And they're like, what? No. And then there's tears and procrastination, and it's all beautiful. Like, it's all great things to practice on.
Yeah.
Right. We can start putting some goals for the kids to start achieving. And as they're learning these skills during the middle school years, and it sounds like we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about middle school.
Yeah.
Right? But it's precursor.
Yeah.
So when do you start keeping credits for high school? Right? When is a child ready for high school? How about a kid that's working very ahead of schedule?
Yeah.
And are you going to graduate them early? Like, all these things start happening. These conversations start happening in middle school.
Yeah.
And
that's
then
good.
You're starting to think these through for high school.
Yeah.
My husband and I came to the decision that we were not going to let our children graduate early. We didn't care if they were done with high school when they were 14. And out of the 8, I had 3 kids that were done before their junior year. But they just spent the next 2 years studying whatever they wanted and getting college credits and stuff. I just felt like for our family, we wanted our teens to be launching into adulthood with the same peer group. And I learned this lesson on my oldest daughter. She was 20 when she double majored and graduated college.
Wow.
And, she couldn't even go out drinking with her friends to celebrate after graduation.
That's really funny.
Right? Yeah. I mean, like, she couldn't, not that drinking is important, but it was this reality that she was so much younger than her peer group, that she was at college. I guess it's, her class was so much younger. So when she went to go to apply for grad school, when she got accepted, they're like, wait, you're only 20? They're like, are you sure you should be here now, or should you go live life a little bit? And so we had this huge conversation, and she decided not to go right into grad school because she was just 20. And so I don't think we don't really think about those things.
Yeah.
So from her, we learned that, okay, it's, our kids, they have so many opportunities to get high school credits that it just lends itself that they can graduate early.
That's
because
awesome.
I keep track of everything.
Right.
I keep track of everything they do, and I can turn anything that they're doing into credit.
I love that.
And usually there's 10 credits that I'm not even putting on their transcript. So we just keep track of everything.
Yeah.
And then at the end, we only put the best on their transcripts. And what happens with some of the kids is that their life goals at 13 are not the same life goals at 18.
Right.
And so some of the things that they were working on at 13, even though it was high school level, some of the other things that they've done later lends itself more to what they want to go to college for.
Right.
And so we have that flexibility Like, isn't that beautiful as a homeschool
Oh, yeah.
parent that you have so many credits
Yeah, that's
that you can
beautiful.
pick and choose, and you
Yes.
can make this transcript look top notch? It's not a lie. My kids did the work.
Right, 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 right.
And but if they're going to be going to an art school, of course I'm going to put all their art stuff on their electives. If they're
Yeah.
going to engineering, so yeah, that's the beautiful thing about homeschooling through high school.
That's awesome. So as we wrap this up, where can they connect with you? Where can they find your information and be able to connect with you?
So my business is called Homeschool Directive,
Hmm.
homeschooldirective.com. And that's the name of the umbrella schools. You can go on there and learn all about the umbrella schools. So if you're homeschooling either in the United States or if you're homeschooling internationally in the UK, we can help you take your children through that educational journey and help them get a transcript and a diploma. We'll help you with the record keeping and coach you along the
That's
way.
awesome. That's awesome. So what would be one big takeaway you'd want parents to take away from this conversation?
Well, yeah, if you're in the middle school ages, stick with it. There is a lot of joy on the other end of it. If you're afraid of homeschooling through high school, don't be. With just a little coaching and a little direction, you'll be able to do it. And there's no greater joy of handing your child a diploma at the end of the 12 years and giving them the diploma. You worked just as hard as they did. And I
Yeah.
want all parents to stick it through
Yeah.
and really experience that joy.
Hmm.
And then I have adult children that are homeschooling their children. And so that's even the journey of watching your adult children homeschool your grandchildren is even fun, like even more fun.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so stick with it. Stick
Yes.
homeschooling through high school. Think about it as just a lifestyle of what you're doing.
Right. I love that. Thank you so much for coming on today and just sharing all of your wisdom and your tips and tricks. So, guys, if you want to reach out to her, Michele, I will put her link in the show notes. Thank you so much, Michele. It's
Thank
been
you so
awesome
much for
talking to
having
you.
me.
Okay.
Bye bye.
If you love the conversations we're having here on the Homeschool Advantage podcast, follow or subscribe our podcast to stay in the loop and never miss this amazing content. And please highly consider taking a minute to leave a positive rating and review to help others like you discover this show. See you next time.